My name is Daniel, and I need to tell you about the most satisfying year of my professional life, the year I systematically destroyed 3 people who thought they could steal my life's work and get away with it. This isn't just about business competition, this is about betrayal, theft, and the kind of revenge that takes patience, planning, and a deep understanding of human psychology. 2 years ago, I was riding high as the co-founder of Nexus Innovations, a software development company specializing in AI-powered business solutions. My partners were Brandon Chen, a brilliant programmer I'd known since college, and Michelle Rodriguez, a marketing genius who could sell ice to polar bears. We'd spent 3 years building something incredible, a revolutionary customer relationship management system that used machine learning to predict client behavior with unprecedented accuracy. The technology was groundbreaking. We had patents pending, major corporations interested in licensing deals, and venture capitalists practically throwing money at us. Our little startup was valued at $12 million, and we were projected to hit $50 million within 2 years. I was 31 years old and about to become seriously wealthy. Then everything fell apart in the span of 2 weeks. It started when I noticed Brandon and Michelle having hushed conversations that would stop the moment I walked into a room. Initially, I thought they were planning something nice, maybe a surprise for hitting our latest milestone or celebrating our upcoming series of funding round. I was naive enough to think these people I'd trusted with everything actually cared about our partnership. The truth was so much worse than I could have imagined. I discovered their plan by accident. I'd forgotten my laptop charger at the office and went back around 10 p.m. to grab it. The building was dark except for our floor, and I could hear voices coming from the conference room. When I got closer, I realized it was Brandon and Michelle talking to someone on speakerphone. "Daniel's the weak link," Michelle was saying. "He's too idealistic, too focused on the technology instead of the business potential. We need to move fast before he realizes what's happening." The voice on the phone belonged to Richard Hawthorne, CEO of Tech Dynamic Solutions, one of our biggest competitors. "And you're sure you can deliver the complete source code and all the algorithmic documentation?" "Everything," Brandon confirmed. "Patents, client lists, development roadmaps, even the unpublished research." Daniel documented everything obsessively. "Once we have him out, you'll have complete ownership of technology that's at least 2 years ahead of anything else in the market." I stood there in the hallway, barely breathing, as they discussed the details of how they planned to steal my company. Michelle had already been meeting with lawyers about forcing me out through a hostile takeover. Brandon had been copying our entire code base to external drives. They'd even been negotiating personal contracts with Tech Dynamic that would make them both millionaires while leaving me with nothing. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. They would present me with a choice: sell my shares to them for a fraction of their value, or watch them destroy the company through legal challenges and competitive sabotage. Either way, I'd lose everything I'd built while they profited from my work. But the worst part wasn't the theft, it was listening to them laugh about how easy it had been to manipulate me. "Daniel always trusted too easily," Michelle said. "He actually believed we were friends. That night changed everything about who I am as a person." I drove home in a daze, my entire worldview crumbling around me. These weren't just business partners. Brandon had been my roommate in college, the best man at my wedding, someone I'd trusted with my life. Michelle had been like a sister to me, someone I'd mentored and supported through her divorce, whose kids called me Uncle Danny. They'd spent months planning to destroy me, and I'd been completely oblivious. I didn't confront them immediately. Instead, I went home and spent the next 3 days in what I can only describe as a controlled rage spiral. I called in sick to work and used that time to think through every interaction, every conversation, every decision we'd made as partners over the past year. Looking back with new eyes, I could see the signs I'd missed. Brandon had been asking seemingly innocent questions about our development processes, getting me to explain technical details that he already knew. Michelle had been pushing for changes to our partnership agreement that would have made a hostile takeover easier. They'd been excluding me from certain client meetings, building relationships that bypassed me entirely. The more I analyzed their behavior, the angrier I became. But anger without direction is just destruction. I needed to channel this energy into something productive, something that would ensure they paid for their betrayal in the most comprehensive way possible. On the fourth day, I made a decision that would define the next year of my life. I wasn't going to try to save Nexus Innovations. Instead, I was going to let them steal it, and then I was going to systematically destroy everything they built on the foundation of their theft. See, Brandon and Michelle had made a crucial error in their planning. They assumed that because I was trusting, I was also naive. They thought that because I focused on technology instead of politics, I didn't understand business strategy. They believed their own narratives about me being the weak link in our partnership. What they didn't realize was that I'd been watching them work for 3 years. I understood their personalities, their motivations, their weaknesses, and their fears better than they understood themselves. If they wanted to play games, I was going to teach them what it meant to compete against someone who had nothing left to lose. The plan I developed over those 3 days was beautiful in its simplicity. I wouldn't try to stop their theft, I'd let them succeed, and then I'd use their success to destroy them. They wanted my technology. Fine. They could have it, along with all the problems they didn't know came with it. The next 2 weeks were the most challenging acting performance of my life. I had to return to work and pretend that nothing had changed while Brandon and Michelle continued their conspiracy right in front of me. Every smile, every casual conversation, every moment of fake camaraderie was torture. But I had work to do. First, I needed to understand exactly how they planned to execute their takeover. I started paying closer attention to their schedules, their phone calls, their computer usage. I installed monitoring software on our shared systems, completely legal since I was a co-founder with administrative access, and began tracking their activities. What I discovered was that their plan was even more elaborate than I'd initially realized. Michelle had been building relationships with our key clients, positioning herself as the real leader of our technical team. Brandon had been in talks with several of our top engineers, promising them better positions and equity in whatever company emerged from their takeover. They'd even been spreading subtle rumors about my mental health, my commitment to the company, and my ability to handle the pressure of rapid growth. Nothing actionable, just enough doubt to make investors and employees question my leadership. But their most clever move was technical. Brandon had been introducing small inefficiencies into our codebase, nothing that would break the system, but enough to create performance issues that would become serious problems as we scaled. His plan was to position these problems as evidence of my poor technical leadership, then fix them after I was gone to look like a hero. This gave me an idea for the first phase of my revenge. If Brandon wanted to sabotage our code, I'd let him. But I'd also create my own version of sabotage, hidden deeper in the system architecture, dormant until activated by specific conditions that I alone knew about. When Tech Dynamic eventually tried to scale our technology, they'd encounter problems that would be almost impossible to trace or fix without access to documentation that I'd never created. I spent late nights and weekends building what I privately called time bombs into our system. Not viruses or malware, nothing illegal, but architectural dependencies that would create cascading failures under specific load conditions. The beautiful thing was that these problems wouldn't manifest until the system was handling 10 times our current user base, exactly the kind of growth that Tech Dynamic was planning. I also began documenting everything. Every conversation, every email, every piece of evidence showing how Brandon and Michelle were planning to steal the company. I wasn't planning to use this evidence to stop them, I was planning to use it to destroy them after they succeeded. 3 weeks after discovering their plan, Brandon and Michelle made their move. It happened exactly as I'd overheard them planning. They called a meeting with our lawyers and presented me with an ultimatum disguised as a business proposal. "Daniel, we need to talk about the direction of the company," Michelle began, her voice carefully modulated to sound concerned rather than hostile. "Brandon and I have been talking, and we think there are some fundamental disagreements about how to handle our growth." Brandon nodded along, playing his role perfectly. "We've been offered an opportunity to partner with a larger firm that could help us scale much faster than we could on our own. But they have concerns about leadership structure and technical direction. The larger firm was Tech Dynamic, of course, though they didn't mention that name. The offer was exactly what I'd expected. They wanted to buy out my shares for $3 million, a quarter of what they were actually worth, and remove me from any operational role in the company. If you don't accept this offer, Michelle said, her mask slipping just slightly, we're prepared to call for a vote of no confidence from the board. We have concerns about your recent behavior, your commitment to the company's success, and frankly, your mental state. I let them finish their presentation, asked a few clarifying questions, and then did something they weren't expecting. I agreed to their terms. You're right, I said, putting on my best defeated expression. I've been struggling with the pressure, and maybe it's time for me to step back. If you think this partnership is best for the company, I'll support it. The look of surprise on their faces was priceless. They'd prepared for a fight, for legal challenges, for me to try to rally support from other investors or employees. They hadn't prepared for me to just give up. Within a month, the deal was done. Tech Dynamic acquired Nexus Innovations for $18 million. Brandon and Michelle became vice presidents in charge of the AI division, with stock options and bonuses that made them both millionaires overnight. I walked away with my $3 million and signed a non-compete agreement that prevented me from working in the same industry for 2 years. They thought they'd won. They had no idea that their victory was actually the first step in their complete destruction. While Brandon and Michelle were celebrating their success, I was already 3 months into building their downfall. The $3 million I'd received from the buyout became seed funding for the most elaborate revenge scheme I'd ever conceived. My first move was to establish a new identity in the business world. I created a consulting company called Strategic Solutions Group, specializing in competitive analysis and market disruption strategies. To the outside world, I was just another consultant helping companies navigate competitive challenges. In reality, I was building a network of contacts, information sources, and strategic relationships that would allow me to systematically dismantle everything Brandon and Michelle tried to build. The beauty of the consulting business was that it gave me legitimate reasons to research Tech Dynamics operations, interview their competitors, and even interact with their clients. I was gathering intelligence while being paid for it. Within 2 months, I had a complete picture of Tech Dynamics' strategic plans for the next 3 years. They were betting everything on the AI technology they'd stolen from me, planning to use it as the foundation for a complete transformation of their business model. They'd promised investors that the technology would increase their market valuation by 300% within 18 months. Brandon had been put in charge of the technical integration, tasked with scaling our AI system to handle Tech Dynamics' much larger client base. Michelle was leading the marketing campaign, positioning Tech Dynamic as the innovative leader in AI-powered business solutions. Everything was going exactly according to their plan, until the system started encountering the problems I'd built into it. The first issues were subtle. Response times that were slightly slower than expected. Occasional glitches in data processing that seemed random and hard to reproduce. Nothing that suggested deliberate sabotage, just the kind of technical growing pains that any complex system might experience during rapid scaling. Brandon, of course, assured everyone that these were temporary issues that would be resolved as they optimized the system for Tech Dynamics infrastructure. He was confident because he understood the surface-level architecture of our original system. What he didn't understand were the deeper dependencies I'd built into the core algorithms. As Tech Dynamics' client base grew and the system handled more complex workloads, the problems got worse. Database queries that worked fine with thousands of records started timing out with millions. Machine learning models that provided accurate predictions for small datasets became unreliable with larger samples. Integration APIs that functioned perfectly in our original environment began failing in Tech Dynamics' more complex infrastructure. Brandon was working 18-hour days trying to identify and fix these problems, but every solution he implemented seemed to create 2 new issues. The technical team was starting to lose confidence in his leadership, and Tech Dynamics executives were beginning to question whether the acquisition had been a mistake. While Brandon was drowning in technical problems, I was working on Michelle's destruction through a different approach. Her success depended on maintaining Tech Dynamics' reputation as an innovative market leader, so I decided to systematically undermine that reputation through strategic competitive intelligence. Remember, I'd spent 3 years building relationships with clients, partners, and industry contacts. These relationships didn't disappear just because I'd left Nexus Innovations. In fact, many of these people felt sorry for me, believing that I'd been unfairly pushed out of my own company. They were more than willing to share information about their experiences with Tech Dynamics' new AI services. What I learned was that Michelle was making promises she couldn't keep. She was telling potential clients that Tech Dynamics' AI system could deliver results that were technically impossible with our current technology. She was overselling capabilities, underestimating implementation timelines, and setting expectations that would inevitably lead to disappointed customers. This gave me the perfect opportunity to accelerate Tech Dynamics' problems. I started reaching out to Michelle's potential clients through my consulting business, offering independent analysis of AI solutions in the market. During these conversations, I would ask detailed technical questions about Tech Dynamics proposals, questions that revealed the gaps between what Michelle was promising and what the technology could actually deliver. I also began working with Tech Dynamics competitors, helping them develop more effective strategies for winning deals that Michelle was pursuing. I knew her sales tactics, her negotiation style, and her weaknesses better than anyone. I could teach her competitors exactly how to outmaneuver her. Within 6 months, Michelle's win rate on new deals dropped from 60% to less than 20%. Major prospects that had seemed guaranteed started choosing competitors instead. Client satisfaction scores for Tech Dynamics AI services fell to the lowest levels in the company's history. The combination of Brandon's technical failures and Michelle's sales struggles created a perfect storm of problems for Tech Dynamics. The AI division that was supposed to transform the company was instead becoming a massive liability. Stock prices started declining as investors lost confidence in Tech Dynamics' strategic direction. But I wasn't finished yet. The final phase of my revenge required patience and perfect timing. The end came faster than even I had anticipated. 18 months after Brandon and Michelle had stolen my company, Tech Dynamics announced that they were discontinuing their AI division and writing off the entire Nexus Innovations acquisition as a failed investment. The technical problems had become insurmountable. Despite hiring additional developers and investing millions in system redesigns, Brandon had been unable to resolve the performance issues that were preventing the AI system from scaling effectively. Tech Dynamics clients were demanding refunds and threatening lawsuits over undelivered promises. Michelle's reputation in the industry was destroyed. Word had spread about her tendency to overpromise and underdeliver, and her credibility with major clients was gone. She'd become a liability to any company that hired her. But the most satisfying part was watching them turn on each other. As the pressure mounted and Tech Dynamics executives demanded answers, Brandon and Michelle started blaming each other for the failures. Brandon claimed that Michelle's unrealistic sales promises had created impossible technical requirements. Michelle argued that Brandon's incompetence had sabotaged what should have been a successful product launch. Their partnership, built on shared greed and betrayal, collapsed under the weight of their failures. They went from being millionaire executives to unemployed pariahs in less than 2 years, with professional reputations so damaged that they had to leave the industry entirely. Brandon now works as a junior developer for a small web design company, making less money at 35 than he did as a fresh college graduate. Michelle tried to start her own consulting business but couldn't attract clients because of her reputation for dishonesty and incompetence. Richard Hawthorne, the Tech Dynamics CEO who had orchestrated the acquisition, was forced to resign after shareholders sued the company over the failed investment. The man who thought he could steal my life's work ended up losing his own career in the process. Meanwhile, my non-compete agreement expired, and I launched a new company using the knowledge and contacts I'd developed during my 2 years of consulting. This time, I built the AI technology from scratch, incorporating everything I'd learned from Tech Dynamics' failures. Within 6 months, we had secured funding and clients that dwarfed anything Nexus Innovations had achieved. The sweetest irony? Several of Tech Dynamics' former clients became my new customers, specifically because they'd been disappointed by the technology that Brandon and Michelle had stolen from me. Looking back, I realized that Brandon and Michelle did me a favor by stealing my company. Their betrayal taught me lessons about business, competition, and human nature that I never would have learned otherwise. It also gave me the motivation to build something much bigger and better than Nexus Innovations ever could have been. They thought they could destroy my dreams and build their success on the ruins of my work. Instead, I turned their dreams into nightmares while building an empire that made their stolen millions look like pocket change. The best revenge isn't just getting even, it's becoming so successful that your enemy's betrayal becomes the catalyst for your greatest achievements. Brandon and Michelle gave me that gift, even though they never intended to. For that, I'm almost grateful. Almost.